Chillot lived in Bethlehem Township and is a 2006 graduate of Freedom High School. He said he is very excited to be the new voice of the Checkers.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm elated, to be honest with you. It feels like a long journey, but it hasn't really been all that long in the grand scheme of time. And to be able to get back into the American Hockey League and, the prospect of traveling back to Pennsylvania a handful of times a year. And I have family down in Raleigh, North Carolina. My mom lives there, only 2 hours away. Honestly, it's the perfect storm for me. And I could not be more excited to get down there.
You have not had the typical broadcaster's journey to this point. Take us through what it's been like coming out of college and getting to where you are now.
So I went to Northampton Community College and, I focused on radio and TV production, and I never really followed up with it in terms of trying to get a job. So I ended up selling cars at Vinart dealerships for about 8 years. I got started in radio just by chance. I heard a commercial during the Monday Night Football game that they were looking for a producer, just someone behind the scenes to push buttons and do traffic updates and sports center updates. And I'm like, I can do that. I mean, that's no problem. So I applied and, I chatted with Tom Fallon, who gave me the job, and I learned the ropes through him and Matt Marcus and all the guys that are now on Fox Sports since it's switched over with its affiliation. When I was there, I got the opportunity to do some Iron Pigs broadcasts in the studio on a handful of occasions. From there, I got the internship with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, which was super convenient because I lived across the street. I was juggling working at the car dealership and working part-time at ESPN Radio and the internship for a while, but ultimately all that came to a head. Fortunately for me, the SPHL came calling, and I landed in Mississippi with my first full-time play-by-play gig 4 years ago now.
From there, you have progressed now to the AHL. What has the hockey journey been like for you over the last few years?
It's been up and down, chaotic, zigzag, however you want to call it. Starting in single A pro, unaffiliated hockey down in Mississippi, not exactly a hockey market. But it's still pro hockey. So things are done a certain way. And after that team ceased operations after 1 year, and here I am just getting my career started, I'm going, oh boy, I don't know what's next now. I just left home. I just got down here. Fortunately, Austin, Minnesota came calling, and it was junior hockey this time. And actually, that's where I'm at now shooting this interview. I'm still here for the next week or so.
In a little over 24 hours, Riverside Arena will be pumping once again as the Bruins play their third straight home game, this time against the Brookings Blizzard. My name is TJ Chillot, and this is your weekend preview.
And there was a little bit of a learning curve when I got to Austin. This is the junior game, and this is how we do it. You got to kind of deal with it, and eventually you kind of learn it. But I'm excited to get back to pro, which in my mind is what I was raised under. So it's gonna be a better fit for me personally.
Charlotte didn't play last year, so how does this all come about that you get the job for this season?
It was a total shot in the dark. Earlier this year, I was a finalist for another AHL job, Utica, as a matter of fact, and it went to Jason Shia, who is formerly the broadcaster for the Charlotte Checkers. And for me, I'm sitting there one night. A couple months went by after Shia had already finished the season and everything like that. And I was just sitting at home, and I was like, I wonder what Charlotte's doing. I reached out to the director of communications, Paul Bernecki, and basically said that. I was like, hey, I was a finalist with Utica. Shia took that job. Obviously, Shia's not with you guys. What are you doing? By the next morning, I had an email in my inbox asking for an interview. I took the interview. The interview went well. A week later, interviewed with the COO of the team, as well as the director of corporate sponsors. There was a click in both of those interviews. I interviewed with 3 different people in 2 different interviews, and there was just a click. It just felt like I had known them forever. It felt like we had similar goals, we had similar aspirations, and it seemed like everything they wanted from me played to my skill set, and it was a perfect puzzle piece fit, in my opinion.
Have you thought about what your return to PPL Center is going to be like?
I think I've been thinking about that ever since I left as an intern. One day trying to get back to the AHL. That's the ultimate dream, right, is to get to the NHL. And I don't think you're going to get to the NHL without getting through the American Hockey League. So I've thought about that since the day I left. And the one thing that keeps resonating with me is particularly on the first time we stay over, and we're staying at the Renaissance, which I assume is still the team's hotel. It'll be really awkward if I get a room on the 7th Street side of the building and I'm looking at my old apartment that's across the street. I can see that being very, very surreal, looking from the other side of the street to my old balcony.
the Checkers will now be affiliated primarily with Florida this year, but you have another affiliation with the expansion Seattle Kraken. How is that going to work?
I think it'll be pretty seamless in that regard, simply because it's only going to be a one-year affiliation, and with them being an expansion team, 90% of the Seattle Kraken, maybe 95% of their roster is going to be guys from the expansion draft, and the entry draft, they're going to be those higher picks. So really what they need Charlotte for is kind of like a rehab spot for guys that get hurt, and maybe some of those lower draft picks that just aren't quite NHL ready. So I don't see them sending too many guys where you're going to be fighting for who's going to get those roster spots and things like that. Last time I look, it's going to be anywhere from 10 to 12 players, and I even think that might be on the high end based on what they need. They obviously need to stash some players somewhere, but it's not going to be a total amount. So we're still, the Panthers are still priority for the team in regards to how they operate and things like that. But the Kraken are going to play a big piece, and I'm sure Jordy Kinnear, head coach of the Checkers, I don't think he's really going to necessarily care what your affiliation is. He's going to put the best players on the ice every single night, regardless of whether you belong to the Kraken, you belong to the Panthers, or anybody else that might be on the team.
Chillot said he is looking forward to getting back to a bigger city, and he notes that Charlotte is one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and he calls it a sports hotbed with both college and pro teams plus NASCAR. And we certainly wish him all the best.